It was the last quarter of the 19th century, and it was early June. An uncommonly warm, bright June, because at that time of year it could sometimes be quite cold on Prince Edward Island, off the southeastern coast of Canada. The little girl on the ferry crossing from the mainland to the island was enjoying the sunshine. Her name was Anne.
The train's still at the station. Come on, Anne. Come on, Anne.
While Anne was boarding the train that would take her to the little station of Bright River, Matthew Cuthbert, wearing a white collar and his best suit, was on his way to the station to meet an orphan boy. Matthew knew he had to nod at the women he met on the road, something that he dreaded. He dreaded all women because he thought they laughed secretly at him. But on Prince Edward Island, you were supposed to nod at all and sundry, whether you knew them or not.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Marilla Cuthbert was Matthew's sister. They were both unmarried and lived on their farm, Green Gables. The big rambling house surrounded by trees was barely visible from the main road. Matthew and Marilla had always been perfectly satisfied with their secluded life and never had any wish to move. Mrs. Rachel Lynde, their neighbor, just happened to glance out of her window when Matthew drove by. The sight of Matthew Cuthbert placidly driving away on a busy Wednesday afternoon, dressed in his best suit, puzzled Mrs. Lynde.
What's wrong, Marilla? You've just seen Matthew driving off.
That's right. He's fetching an orphan boy for us.
I have to sit down, Marilla. Are you quite sure you're in earnest about the matter? What on earth could suddenly have put such a notion into your head?
Suddenly? Matthew and I have been thinking about adopting an orphan boy for some time now, all winter, in fact. Ever since Mrs. Spencer said she was adopting a little girl.
It's not too far now. We'll be home very soon.
Why are the roads on the island so red, Mrs. Spencer?
Oh, how on earth should I know, Anne?
But Marilla, you and Matthew are far too old.
That's exactly why we're adopting him. We're both getting on in years, Rachel. Matthew's 62 and he simply can't do all the chores on his own anymore. We don't have an heir to Green Gables either, so to whom will we leave all our worldly possessions? That's why we decided to adopt a smart, suitable boy of about 10 or 11. Ah, the train should be arriving at the station about now.
Right River Station. Right River Station.
Will the train be stopping long?
No, it leaves directly for White Sands.
Anne, please wait here on the platform. Someone will be here to fetch you soon.
Yes, of course, Mrs. Spencer.
Goodbye, Anne, dear. I do hope you'll be happy in Green Gables.
Thank you, Mrs. Spencer. I'm sure I shall be.
Give my regards to Miss Cuthbert.
Would you like to sit in the waiting room, little girl?
No, thank you.
Well, Marilla, I'll just tell you plain you're doing a mighty foolish thing.
We'll just have to see whether we're doing a foolish thing or not, won't we, Rachel? Matthew and I have given a great deal of consideration to our decision, and I'm quite sure we'll be getting a decent, hard-working little boy from the orphanage.
It's a risky thing you're doing. You can't be sure he will be a decent, hard-working little boy, Marilla. Just remember, you're bringing a strange child into your home. I heard of a case the other day where an orphanage child poisoned the well of the family who'd adopted him. The whole family became fearfully ill. Only in this instance, it wasn't a boy. It was a girl. Girl.
Really? Well, that's all right then. We're not getting a girl, so I'm sure there's no need to worry. A boy would never dream of doing such a thing.
I simply can't believe it, Marilla and Matthew. They don't know the first thing about bringing up children. I feel sorry for that poor little boy. Matthew's so shy he only opens his mouth once a year, and then one has to drag the words out of him. And the only thing Marilla's ever raised are day-old chicks.
Will the 5:30 train from Charlottetown be along soon, George?
Ah, there you are at last, Matthew. What happened? Your watch stopped? The 5:30 train has been in and gone half an hour ago. People are always making fun of our train, but today it was exactly on time.
But I
No need to get agitated, Matthew. There was a passenger dropped off for you. She's sitting over there, waiting for you. I asked her to go into the ladies' waiting room, but she said she preferred to stay outside. There was more scope for imagination outside, that's what she said. More scope for the imagination. Have you ever heard anything like it? She's a real case if you ask my opinion, Matthew.
but I am not expecting a girl. I don't understand it. There must be some mistake. Was Mrs. Spencer on the train?
Yes, indeed she was. She got off the train with that girl.
I don't understand it. I came for a boy, not a girl.
Well, I'm sorry to say I can't help you there, Matthew. I think you should maybe question the girl. Who knows? Maybe they were clean out of boys of the brand you had in mind. Ask her. I dare say she'll be able to explain. Now I'm going home for supper.
Oh, no. Please stay here. You can't leave me alone now. What am I going to tell Marilla?
I suppose you must be Mr. Matthew Cuthbert of Green Gables.
Yes.
I'm very glad to see you here, sir. Really very glad to see you, Mr. Cuthbert. I was beginning to be afraid you weren't coming for me, and I was imagining all the things that might have happened to prevent you, and I have a vivid imagination. I'd made up my mind that if you didn't come, I'd go down the track to that big wild cherry tree, climb into it and stay all night. Up there in the tree I would also have been safe from the wolves.
Wolves? What wolves?
It would have been so very romantic to sleep in a wild cherry tree all laden with white blooms in the silvery moonlight, don't you think, Mr. Cuthbert? In the orphanage, we had only grey blankets. You can't really dream under a grey blanket, can you? And, Mr. Cuthbert, you must admit you wake up in a much happier frame of mind in the morning when you've had a lovely dream during the night.
I'm sorry I was late. Come along, give me your bag.
That's very kind of you, but I can manage. It really isn't very heavy, Mr. Cuthbert, although I have all my worldly goods in it. If it isn't carried in a certain way, the handle pulls up. You see? So it's best if I keep it, because I have the exact knack of it, Mr. Cuthbert. I'll be fine. Is this the way?
Yes.
Oh, I'm very glad you turned up when you did, even if it would have been nice to sleep in a wild cherry tree. But that's something I can always do at a later stage, not so, Mr. Cuthbert? We have to drive a long way, haven't we? Mrs. Spencer said it was a good 8 miles to your home. I'm glad, because I love driving, although I haven't often had the opportunity. Oh, it feels as if I'm dreaming. I'm no longer alone. I can't believe I'm going to live with you and belong to you forever. You and I are going to get along just fine, you'll see. At least I hope so. Oh, this is so exciting. How lovely. It's comfy. They treated me very well at the orphanage, but unfortunately there is little scope for the imagination in an orphanage, and without that the soul dies. You're an orphan yourself, and all the other children are orphans too. Although I must say it was pretty interesting to imagine that perhaps the girl who sat next to you at the dinner table was really the daughter of a rich and famous earl who had been stolen away from her parent in her infancy by a cruel nurse who, needless to say, died before she confessed to a heinous crime. It was a fascinating story. You know, Mr. Cuthbert, I used to lie awake at night and imagine these things because I didn't have time in the day with all the work we had to do. I guess that's the reason why I'm so thin. I really am unattractively thin. There isn't a prick on my bones. You know what I like to imagine the most, Mr. Cuthbert, is that I'm the perfect shape, nice and plump with pretty chubby cheeks and dimples in my elbows.
Do you think we could drive off now?
That's what I've been waiting for. I promise you solemnly I won't fall off along the way, sir.
Giddy up.